Welcome back to another UNC football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me as she always does when we talk football commitments and really all football recruiting related to North Carolina, our very own Miss Deana King. And Deana, the third commitment is in the books for the class of 2022. The train is revved up. It's humming. Mack is telling guys, take the offers, dudes. Take them now because they're going to get snatched up. And three of them have now been picked up. Trayvon Green, an offensive tackle from Chester, Virginia, which is not far from Richmond. That's another kid from the Commonwealth, Deana. He has announced his commitment to play at Carolina. This is someone we've been tracking for a couple of years. He was originally a 2021. He reclassed to 2022. As he told THI this past summer, got to lose weight, got to get my grades up, got to get myself ready for college. I'm sure those were things told to him by Carolina. You do those things, you could be a Tar Heel. So Trayvon Green is the third member of the class of 2022. What are your thoughts?
That train starting to rev up,
Yep.
And it's got a Virginia flavor. And we've told people to look north, especially in the class of 2022 recruiting class, and he's another one. He's joining Holloway and Chapman, building a big Virginia pipeline, and it's in a big place where North Carolina wants to regain some traction in the Richmond area. They got good traction now in the Norfolk, Hampton, Virginia Beach area, the 757. Now they're going a little north up to the Richmond area. So literally a big commitment. Green has worked really hard on getting himself in his weight down and his grades. And so, like you said, probably a promise from the coaching staff that, hey, you do these things, we'll take you. And he's done all he can do. And so he's ready to take his talents to Chapel Hill.
If the Virginia kids that are hopping on board the Carolina train right now would like to give themselves a nickname, maybe a text group nickname, they just call themselves the Commonwealth Club. Because you've got Tiana Holloway, you've got Tyshawn Chapman, and now you got Trayvon Green. 3 out of 3 in the class from Virginia, and a lot more coming from Virginia. Now, as far as Trayvon Green goes, 6'7", 355 pounds right now. When we talked to him in the summer, he was listed at the time in the 380 range. Some people say he was above 380, so clearly losing the weight. The number 49 overall offensive tackle nationally, the number 17 overall prospect in the state of Virginia. And this class is really, really loaded with talent. So being number 17 in the 22 class of Virginia is a pretty big deal. Some of the schools that have also offered him that he chose Carolina over: Boston College, West Virginia, Pittsburgh, and Rutgers. Not a great offer sheet, but you can elaborate on this a little bit more. You know more about the situation, obviously, than I do. But a lot of people have kind of felt if this kid was going to pop for a school and was going to get everything in order that he needed to get in order to pop to a school, I think a lot of people have felt for some time that North Carolina would be that school.
He's been to UNC a lot. He's been to some of the basketball games. Couldn't miss him. You know, he's going to remind me a lot of Marcus McKeithen, literally his size, and he's ranked higher. McKeithen was a low 2-star that didn't even have a Rivals profile for a long time, but he's in an area that gets a lot of recognition for sports in the Richmond area. So, yeah, he's Virginia. Well, North Carolina, I guess a lot of people are like, okay, he's an offensive lineman. How's this going to affect others? Well, North Carolina's class in lineman, offensive lineman, is not stellar. I'll be honest. There's some certain position groups in North Carolina that are really loaded: defensive line, linebacker, that type. Virginia is loaded with offensive linemen, and so they got two other big targets up there, Zach Rice and Gunnar Givens, that, you know, we said it before, look north, and they're going to take multiple linemen. They have to, because they're not losing anybody right now, but they're going to have to start building that depth.
They're going to lose a lot in the next two, senior classes. Essentially, they're going to lose a lot of kids from the offensive line. So they got to replenish, and they're going to bring in. People had their hopes set on Givens and Rice. They were going to bring in more than two anyway. And I think what's interesting, and I'm going back to the Virginia thing, but I want to stay on Green too. I think what's interesting is that the giant flag that was planted in the soil in North Carolina with the class of 21, literal ownership of the state, was what Mack and the staff did. They're going to try to put a similar flag in Virginia for 22 for multiple reasons. Number one, because Virginia is loaded in 22 like North Carolina was in 21. Also, go look at those 96 and 97 rosters. A lot of Virginia, a huge contingent from North Carolina, obviously, but a lot of kids from Virginia. When you look at North Carolina's football history, the best teams they've had have had really important kids from the state of Virginia, and sometimes a lot of kids from the state of Virginia. We've actually toyed with the idea.
Staff.
Pardon me?
A couple of those are on the coaching staff. Tommy Dixon,
absolutely.
Dre Bly,
Yep.
and Jay Bateman is a Virginia guy, even though he didn't play for UNC. So
Fink his last 2 years of high school was up in the DC area, in the Woodbridge area. So I think you mentioned Fink, but I wasn't sure. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge Virginia lineage in North Carolina football. And if you go to Virginia to get 3 or 4 offensive linemen this year, who cares? I don't think it'd be, and I love your comparison about Marcus McKeith. And I'll never forget when Carolina got him. The reaction on our message board was like, who is this guy? Because we didn't really know much about him. In fact, you created his rival's profile. And you and I had a chuckle about that, or as you would say, had a tickle about it, that he didn't have a profile. We had trouble finding pictures. I remember the first 3 or 4 stories of Marcus McKeith that we ran. We ran the same photo that we got from his Twitter feed, and it was not a very good photo. And now look at him. He's going to probably play in the NFL. So if there's a fan base that should understand, there are a lot of dudes out there that may not be highly decorated, may not have an amazing offer sheet, but could still come in and have huge impacts. It should be North Carolina fans, given the success of Larry Fedora's staff with diamonds in the rough. Javonte Williams, Marcus McKeith.
Javonte was
They got walk-ons in the NFL. Mac Hollins is still in the NFL. Nicole Holcomb is going to be in the NFL for a decade. So don't worry about the specs right now, the rankings.
The stars. That's what a lot of people are just interested in, the stars. I mean, and it's not fair for the 2022 kids, because rivals, they go a lot on in-person evaluations, and they've not been able to go out to these camps and combines. Hopefully we might have a rivals camp this year. I'm not sure, but they're being very cautious about some of these rankings for these kids, and who knows what they'll end up by the time they start classes next January.
And Deana, the number 49 offensive tackle in the class nationally, the number 17 prospect overall in Virginia, that's really good.
Considering what
if people want to have something to sink their teeth into, to feel good about, do that. Also, I think the fact that this kid has lost a lot of weight, and this kid identified UNC as a place where he wanted to go, and he's done what they've asked him to do, that's huge to me. I think you got to think about the kind of kids that Mack wants to bring into the program, the kind of kids that fit in the program. They've said all along, we don't want to have to convince a kid to come to our school, because then you might have to convince that kid to stay at your school. We want to get kids that want to be here. We want to get kids that will do what we ask them to do. And Trayvon Green has already begun the process of showing that he will do that. So I think because of his size, and he is a good player, that I think people should be very excited about this. You need linemen. Offensive line, there's so much attrition on the offensive line. You got to bring them in. There are a lot of 4-star offensive linemen North Carolina's brought in the last several years that didn't pan out. A lot of them. So bring them in, coach them up. 6'7", 355. He'll probably be down to about the 340 range at some point after he arrives. You know, get him in that weight room, coach him up, and see what happens. You don't know where your stars in football are going to come from a lot of the time.
Well, Trayvon, he mentioned family and environment, and if you've been following the recruiting at UNC, that word family has come up so many times with these recruits. Grandpa Mack, as everybody's calling him, is, you know, he's just building, and he's got some excellent assistant coaches that are great guys, great fathers, great men, and they're attractive for some of these young men because they've done a lot of things that they want to strive to do. It's what they say, 40-year decision.
Yeah.
And so he's literally another big pickup in Virginia, and we can't stress that theme, you know.
And there will be many more. Trayvon Green, 6'7", 355 pounds right now, and it's trending down. He'll be 354 to 353 because he's doing what they've asked him to do. From Chester, Virginia Life Christian Academy, he is the 3rd member of North Carolina's class of 2022. All 3 of them are from the beautiful Commonwealth, my home state of Virginia. She's Deana King. I'm Andrew Jones. If you like this video, click like, hit the notification bell so you get updates every time we post a video, and we do it often. And of course, go to Tar Heel Illustrated to check out all of our coverage of the UNC Tar Heels in football, basketball, and recruiting. And we're prolific with our content. Thanks for stopping by.